I'm Tim Freitas, and welcome to the Garden of English. When creating arguments, whether in real-life interactions, in class, or on an AP Lang exam, it can sometimes be really hard to think of real evidence to support whatever position you're trying to prove. But it's absolutely imperative that you support your arguments with substantial evidence because you want to present yourself as a reasonable person. Now, what normally happens when you have to generate an argument but you really haven't considered the evidence that you've wanted to use is that you begin to rely heavily on hypothetical situations. And the truth is, hypotheticals are often garbage. Not always, just often.
I don't do hypotheticals. Let's deal with reality.
One time when hypotheticals don't suck as evidence is when you're using fictional literature to prove your point. And let's be real, fiction is entirely hypothetical because literary events didn't happen. But there could be a world where they may happen. How philosophical. Anyway, I've already made a video about how to select strong evidence to support your arguments. And of course, it's linked right in the description below this video, so if you haven't watched that video, you certainly want to after you finish this one. But today, I want to give you some tips and show you some examples that will help you recognize some ways to incorporate fictional literature in your argument responses. I do have to begin though by addressing a commonly peddled misconception. If you are writing an argument paper, whether it be for an English teacher or an AP Lang exam reader, just because that person may really enjoy reading doesn't mean that your paper will become intrinsically stronger because you choose to write about a literary example over one that's taken from the real world. If you ever hear anything like this, just know that it's fake news.
You are fake news.
Misinformation.
Think about that misinformation going to someone you love.
Also, AP exam readers don't expect you to use literature as examples in your arguments. What they expect you to do is to write strong arguments, and if you use fiction, so be it. Just make sure that if you're using fiction to substantiate your argument, you do it well. Now, for my first model, I'm going to use a thesis and a body paragraph that was created in response to the publicly released Exploring the Unknown prompt from 2018. That prompt is linked up right in the description below this video. Also below this video, you'll find the like button, the subscribe button, the channel member button, and the super thanks button. Clicking on any one of those or all of those will help get our content to students everywhere so we can help them out just like I'm helping you. Let's begin our exploration of including literary examples by checking out a thesis in response to that Exploring the Unknown prompt. Exploring the unknown, more often than not, offers diverse opportunities for individuals to enrich their own lives and society at large. Now, this thesis is strong and complex. And it's complex because it answers the prompt. The value of exploring the unknown is made clear in saying that individuals are able to enrich their own lives and society at large. And the phrase, more often than not, admits that there may be some nuance to this argument and suggests that there might be times when exploring the unknown may be potentially more detrimental to progress, but the paper overall is going to argue this certainly isn't normally the case. So in order to show you what to do with a fictional example, I want to focus on the nuanced paragraph that would be a type of concession paragraph in the grand scheme of the whole essay. By the way, if you want to learn more about conceding, you can access my video that looks just like this and is linked in the description as well. Now, let's take a look at what some of the topic sentences would look like for the body paragraphs if we were responding to this essay based on the thesis I just shared with you. They're about to pop up on your screen. I'm going to use the third topic sentence to create my paragraph that will include literary examples. Based on what the topic sentence projects, I'm going to need to describe at least one example about the obsessive pursuit of knowledge that ends up being quite devastating. And one of the best books I could think of for this would be The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. But there is another Gothic novel that could also help me prove the same point, and that would be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So, I'm going to include information from both of them in the evidence part of the paragraph that I'm writing. I'm going to start including my examples with a transitional phrase like for instance, or for example, or take for example how. And then I'm going to describe what happens in both pieces of literature in detail, but without going over 5 sentences. I need to make sure that someone who has never read the book could still figure out what was generally going on, but I also need to make sure that I don't just fall into writing summary and not actually arguing what I want to. Also, if you're practicing this, I don't want you to think that you have to include 2 comparative literary examples just because I do. The general rule of thumb here, though, is that whether you choose 1 or 2 different pieces of literature as evidence, you must summarize it in 3 to 5 sentences. No more, no less. So, take a look at what adding evidence into my paragraph would look like. It's about to show up on your screen. Alright, Look at the verbs, adverbs, and adjectives I used in my description to make sure that I maximized the precision of what I was writing. Also notice, though, that I didn't provide every plot detail because I didn't need them. I was selective and included only the details that I needed to prove my point and substantiate what I was arguing in my topic sentence. But now let's consider the commentary, because this is where you have to link the fictional example to the actual argument so that the argument is strengthened by the example, not dampened by the fact that it's not real.
It's a total fabrication.
So let me toss the rest of this paragraph up on your screen for you here. If you don't want to pause the video to read the whole thing, know that you can find all of it in the video document that I've included in the description below this video. Take a look, here's the paragraph. The first thing that I want you to notice about the commentary that you just saw is how it is filled with cause and effect language. That is how you're going to develop your commentary. I bolded it in the example itself. Strong commentary will always include this. What I also want you to notice is the sentence that I underlined that concedes that the examples are fiction, but then works to connect the fictional example with universal truths and experiences. You must do this.
Do it.
Because the fiction is tied to something universal, it actually becomes solid, concrete evidence. If I just left the examples as fiction, they would stay in the realm of the hypothetical. But by including the line about how fiction explores the universal, I brought the artificial to life and substantiated my argument quite well. I mean, I'm basically the writer's version of Victor Frankenstein. Luckily, I'm not the giant scumbox that he was. Did you also notice that I included a few more comparative examples in my commentary that continue to substantiate how the over-pursuit of knowledge can be destructive? Not a bad idea to do that as well.
Pretty good.
By creating the comparison to real-life events that many have experienced, I've solidified the literary examples all the more. Now, here are the basic rules you need to follow when using fiction as an example in any argument that you produce. 1. You need to provide specific details that will substantiate your claims. 2. Don't describe what happens in the fiction in more than 5 sentences or less than 3. 3. In your discussion of the example, admit that some may have an issue with your examples being fiction, but then link the example to universal truths. 4. See if you can link the fictional example to something actual to further substantiate the example itself. 5. Use plenty of cause and effect language in your commentary. In the video document found in the description, I've included my example that you just saw up on your screen. I also have a template for you in there so you can bridge from your fictional example to universal experience. But I also have another student example for a different prompt that uses fiction as its evidence, and it links the fiction to the universal experiences that prove it to be true. But this student does it a little bit differently than I showed you here. So I want you to make sure that you check out that example as well and see if you can't glean what that particular student does in his writing to connect the fiction to the universal truths that it explores. Once you've noticed the moves that he makes, know that you will have 2 ways to write about fiction as evidence in your argument papers. And now that you know how to do this, you can learn about how to write about personal anecdotes and faith-based examples in your argument papers by watching what's about to show up right on your screen.